Welcome to Inside Abode, ladies and gentlemen. How y'all doing? I'm your host, Dave Jones, and we are here with another episode of Inside Abode. We're in the middle of summer. It's nice out, and we were just laughing about, my guest and I were just laughing about how most times we're inside because this is our busy season. And so all you teachers and you folks that are enjoying your summer, I hope it's going so well for you. And thank you for being here and listening. If you are listening, thank you. I really appreciate everybody that's listening. And before I get into the guest, I want to, just like every episode, I want to invite you to subscribe to the podcast. We try to drop every week, and sometimes I'm human. I'm not. I think I probably have a few more episodes in this season, and then we'll take a break and then get into the fall season. But I want to just invite you to hit the subscribe button, and then you can watch us on YouTube as well, and you can just enjoy the podcast. There's something for everybody. Go back in the archives. We've talked about all kinds of things. So let me get into my guest today. My guest has 30 years in the title industry, 30, and then 25 years with CW Title, who is one of our collaborators or partners with Windermere Real Estate. And he also is, I just found this out, he also is a UW Husky. So that is also
dogs.
Yeah. Troy St. George, how you doing, man? Welcome to the show.
Good, Dave. Thank you for having me be here. I appreciate that. It's exciting. This is a great format, and you do some great stuff. So excited to be here today. Thank you.
No, thank you. And you just like made my day. You just said that you actually listened to the podcast, which is just it's still weird to me that people listen to my voice in a podcast like I do for other podcasts and stuff like that. It blows my mind. So anyway, I appreciate you for listening as well, and everyone else that's listening. So
100%.
Yeah. So how's your summer been so far, man? Before we get into the questions, how's your summer been?
Well, unlike most summers for the last couple of years, not as busy as usual.
Mm-hmm.
Actually had some time to get away, play a little golf, which is atypical for this time of year, but it's been going good. It's going good. Obviously in a condensed market like we're in right now, leaves a little bit of more opportunity for free time, but no, it's been good. It's been good.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I think we're all hoping, not hoping, as we were laughing before, like we complain when we're busy and we complain when we're not busy in this industry. So it's just the way it goes. But I, for one, am pretty optimistic that we are heading in the right direction. I'm not going to say we're there yet, and it might be till next year or whatever, but at least like it felt like when we were in 22, mid 22, last year just seemed like it was such a roller coaster in terms of, the rates jumping up 4%, it was just I don't know. I prefer where we're at right now, which is a little less volatile, I guess.
Yeah, I think we're going to get into some consumer where they're going to understand that they're not going to go back down to 3 again at some point.
Yeah.
And the first half of last year being like no first half we'd had in a quote unquote normal year, other than the 2 previous to that. During the COVID years, it was complete mayhem, and I think a really bad thing for all of our industries. The service that was coming out of title and escrow was atrocious because we didn't have a choice. There weren't enough people. There was a term literally that was invented in the industry back then. We luckily didn't have any of these, but it was called runners. And literally people would show up for work that day, and they'd get up and they'd walk out. Of people that have been working in the industry for 20 years, they'd get up and walk out and never come back. I mean, it was that unhealthy of an environment.
Wow.
In what we were, it was crazy. Never seen anything like it. And I always joke around, I don't necessarily want to repeat it. We could get a little bit closer to it than what we are right now. But it was an interesting time for sure. So I think you'll see some normalcy once we find that the home buyers are aware that we're not going to have a drop back down into the 3s and 4s.
Right.
That's just kind of what's going to be a good catalyst for it.
I agree. And I would rather be on the, upside and kind of ticking down slightly, then, going like
exactly. And
goes up, inventory goes up. Oh, what do we like? Yeah, it's just
we've got this theory over at CW where we're not, we don't want to rely on hope of interest rates, right? So even when we're operating where we're operating at now, it's like, what can we do to innovate, to bring value to our clients, hospitality, experience, so that we can operate when interest rates are where they're at? And that's our general focus. Anybody can do it when interest rates are at 3%. We just proved that. So that's what we're focusing our efforts on these days.
Yeah, and that's good to hear, because it's the same with our office too, where we're just saying like, this is a market for pros, and so are we pros like we say we are, or are we just another real estate brokerage and company? And obviously we feel like we're not. So but we also have to do all the things to be a pro, and there are some sacrifices that are made. And this is the market where you have to be good, and if you want the business and your business to look like you want to look, and it's not going to look the same way. It's not looking the way we want it to look for all of us. I think right now, I think we all can agree there, and I think we all have room to improve. But like you said, at CW, with your mindset is there, and that value and that experience and that value add for clients, I think is the right way to go. It's the only way.
Well, there's great opportunity during times like this, and sometimes that opportunity shows itself in many different ways, one of which can be self-improvement and self-reflection. And how do we were hanging on for 2 years. And now it's a matter of how do we actually improve the operation, bring more value to our clients, and that's where the success is going to come from in the future.
Yep. See, I told y'all this is going to be a good episode. All right. We haven't even gotten into the questions yet. All right. So, as the executive vice president of CW Title, what are the biggest challenges like facing the title industry? So as that's an interesting one. And how is CW Title addressing any of those challenges?
It's interesting. There are multiple different facets to that question. One of the main things, just from purely title insurance, is it's fraud. And the reason I say that is because it's an insurance product, right? If all of a sudden car accidents go up, insurance companies have a problem. And as title claims come more up, then insurance companies have a problem. And in fraud, and there's been some new twists on some old fraud and some new fraud that's come about, and I'll kind of touch on some of those. It's an instantaneous claim at that point. So especially when we're dealing with the sizes of dollar amounts that we deal with in our zip codes that we work in, they can be very sizable. The wire fraud has always been a problem. It's been a problem for a while. We've all got disclosures within our purchase and sale agreements and all sorts of things that we work through. We've seen a new little twist on it. It's an old one, but it's seen a uptick. Normal wire fraud, they're trying to divert the buyer's money coming into escrow. So the fraudsters have hacked into somebody's account within the transaction. They sit, they wait, and then they pounce at roughly about the time the buyer's going to wire their money to escrow to try to divert it to their account. That's still happening. Those attempts are still going. But what the uptick we've seen now is on the flip side of that, where they're trying to divert escrow to disperse seller net proceeds to their account. We've seen this for a while. We've got policies and procedures in place and protocols to make sure that we don't do that. But we haven't seen a lot of that recently because of all of those procedures. We kind of blocked that end of things. We've had 3 attempts in the last month and a half where they've tried to do that, which is 3 more than we've had in the last year. So that's an uptick and not going away anytime soon. Another one is an old fraud scenario, and it's earnest money deposit fraud, where the quote-unquote buyer, they're not really a buyer, they're a fraudster, deposits money into escrow and then cancels the contract a day or so afterwards and wants their earnest money back. Well, the check hasn't had a chance to clear, and we had And that's been going on for a while. We've got, again, policies and procedures to protect against that. Check hasn't cleared, that sort of thing. But what we're finding now, and we had a scenario about a month ago that's different now than the ones before. Normally before, when we figured it out and we called fraudsters out, they would disappear into the darkness and we'd never hear from them again.
Yes.
But we had one a month or so ago, and a few within the last couple of months, where they tried to do this. It's blinking red lights when it gets to us, so we know what's going on. We do our due diligence on the check, and then we tell them, hey, we are not going to refund your earnest money now that this contract is terminated because the earnest money check that you gave us is fraudulent. And they're doubling down and getting aggressive with us.
Oh.
They're not disappearing into the darkness. They're pressing, even tripling down to say that they're going to turn us into the authorities if we don't wire the money to their company. Yeah, I know. It's new. And they're not disappearing until this last one. I was on the phone with the fraudster and explained to them that there was under no circumstances would we be refunding their earnest money, and that they should discontinue reaching out to us. He did, which was lucky. Oftentimes, some of the triggers, just for your brokers to, if they're seeing these types of things, some of the oddities that you'll find, earnest money, say $10,000 earnest money per the contract, and the buyer wants to deposit $100,000. Obviously, very atypical for a buyer to want to deposit that much more money than what is required per the contract.
Right.
Another one that we've seen is seller wants, say, $10,000 in earnest money. That's and the buyer comes back and says, how about I give you $150,000 in earnest money? So it just quantities there are things that are out of place that are some good red flags for us. So some twists on some old ones. But the main one, and probably the main thing that is one of the challenges facing title insurance is seller impersonation fraud. I know Kim's probably talked about this in your office. You've seen flyers that we've come out with, or where we're trying to broadcast this. And seller impersonation fraud is hitting across the country. And our underwriters, we get memos on it continually. We have new underwriting requirements that we have to have. And what that is where sellers typically who are vacant land, it's not always vacant land, but it is the most often vacant land, most often without any debt. And oftentimes the sellers, per the tax address where the tax billing is mailed, because there is no obviously property address to send it to on vacant land, they're either out of state, out of country, or out of area. And so the fraudsters are combing through the assessor's records, I assume, to find these potential hits. And then they're representing themselves to real estate brokers as the sellers. And subsequently then, oftentimes if it gets that far going into contract, they obviously don't sign in front of a notary that is someone known to the title and escrow company or the real estate broker, because that would, they're off, we assume, in a foreign land, but could be domestic, we don't know. And it's an instant failure of title. Not only to mention a waste of your broker's time and efforts, because it's not a real contract at that point.
Right.
It's a sale. And oftentimes we're finding that the sellers who are the real owners of the property are completely unaware of any of this taking place, and often don't find out about it until much later on down the line, until they go to do something with their property. We've got rigorous controls in place to protect against this. Much of that falls on my shoulders because it's that important for us to make sure that we're filtering through each of these types of properties. And I'm not going to go into all the ways that we try to go against it, because I don't want to put that out in airwaves. But I have literally talked to owners. We had one, it was a broker in Tacoma, and he got a listing from, I think it was a phone call, may have been an email, so no obviously face-to-face contact with the seller. And he said, he told us, something seems off with this, can you investigate? So I did some research, and online trying to get anything that can verify this information that this seller is telling us. I was the tax address for the property was in West Seattle. So I went to Google Maps, zoomed in on the property as the, with the street view. It was a vacant commercial building. I accidentally zoomed in a little too close on one side and needed to pop out. When I popped out, there was no markings on the window for the business. When I popped out, I turned the camera to the left and the sun hit the window just at the right time to be able to see the name of the business. So they Googled the business. The business owner's name was the name of the taxpayer. So, and he on a verified number at that point. I contacted him that day, left him a voicemail, and didn't get a return call that day. The next morning, we get another request for title insurance on the same property from a different real estate broker. Now, this is really starting to feel fishy, right? Yeah. And your brokers are in a catch-22 here, because if it's a real deal, they don't want to be telling, hey, are you really the property? All right, there's some lines there that you have to be careful with. So we have to do a lot of this kind of independent of the seller that they're actually dealing with, who may or may not be a fraudster. So I contacted, I left the voicemail, we got the new order in, and I just put everything on hold. And later in the day, the real property owner called me, and at first he thought I was a scammer. I had to kind of walk him through who we were, gave him our website, our pictures on. I was like, here's who we are, we're locally owned. And I walked him through what was going on, and he was not intending to sell his property and had no idea anything that was going on. And it's funny because we do this every day, right? We deal in a real property every day, but average people don't. They don't know. And so he literally asked me the question. He's like, Troy, so what is the name of the person who's trying, what name are they using to try and sell my property? And he was kind of flip about the whole thing for most of the call. And I paused for a second and I said, well, they're using your name because you're the property owner. And he's like, and the light bulb went on.
That he perked up in, yeah.
Yeah, it was like, whoa, they're using my name? I said, yes, they're using your name. And so then we talked more about some prevention measures. I told him we'd flag our databases, but there's 18 other title companies out there that he needed to contact a real estate attorney to protect himself. Had we sold that property and not contacted that seller, it would be an instantaneous, because we've got now a buyer who's legit with an owner's policy of title insurance protecting them. Our agents, it would ultimately probably be brought into any lawsuit that the ultimate seller has because they were a part of that trade. It would just have been a nasty scenario.
Absolutely.
We've had about 12 hits on that, and we insure a lot more than 12 vacant land with no debt properties. So we're going through every single one of them to make sure that the seller is the real person. I will say, in all of those scenarios, to all your brokers, the best tip I can say is if something seems odd, call timeout. There's no rush. Call timeout. Call your experts. Call us. Call me. Get a hold of your account rep. It is super important so that you're not wasting your time and money and effort. And we're all on the same page. We've had a few that got down to really close to closing that we've caught just because of the timing and logistics. And these fraudsters always want to close fast. Speed is in their favor. We can always call timeout to make sure that we're doing the right thing and making sure everybody is protected.
That's a great story. And I think it speaks to, like, you actually going through that story, and I think it helps, like, say, for example, if agents are sitting there, like, don't know what title escrow does, and or what you guys do in your job, in your daily job, like, that you just literally laid it out and illustrated in a very eloquent and detailed fashion a story about, like, how this stuff gets stopped. And CW is a local, like, you're local, right? You're here in Seattle.
And we've got 10 branches across Washington state and are the largest title and escrow company headquartered in Washington. And we literally and figuratively have people sitting by waiting to take your call to answer those questions. We are the experts. And whereas you and your brokers don't have to be experts in all of this, consider us a tool in your tool bag.
Yeah.
And we're definitely here to help. And even if something seems minutely odd, or we'll tell you, well, there are some probabilities. We had one broker here in King County who just said, something just doesn't feel right. And after investigating the scenario, I couldn't definitively tell based upon the information that she had, but I could tell her there are these 7 of these 10 red flags. So be cautious, and because we've seen a lot, and we'll probably and are kind of on that cutting edge of seeing it as new trends develop. So utilize us. We're here to help.
Yeah, and it's really good for everyone to hear it. Even if people aren't an agent and have to call title, if you're a potential buyer or seller, it's good to hear. Like this is stuff that's happening. That working with a real estate agent who has a resource like CW title behind them to vet some of this stuff out. Like I just had a inquiry from our website to me, and it was a buyer and wanted to know something, and I was just like, hey, and it did seem kind of fishy, but I don't want to assume anything. I don't assume anything or judge anything. I just maybe English is their second or third language. All good, so I'd type back and say like, hey, you have a time to chat, and they want to look for like a $3 million property or something like that, and then I could tell Anna, like, she was like, oh, I heard from that person too. And I was like, huh, and it could be real, it could be not. I haven't heard back, but they did not want to get on a call with me. And so I was like, immediately, that's a red flag for me. I'm just going, okay, well, what's up here? But I also don't want to like shun somebody who wants to buy a $3 million property. So
that's the double-edged sword that you guys are dealing with.
Right.
And it is what's real and what isn't. We don't want to. It is bad to have a fraudster reach out and waste time, effort, and money. It's also bad to turn down a potential $3 million purchaser, right? So it's trying to vet through that, and whatever we can do to help you guys do that, it makes perfect sense.
And what I don't want people to do as they're listening to this is I don't want them to not continue to assume good intent.
True.
That's
100%.
That's why I'm sitting there taking I assume good intent always, right? And so and if there are red flags, just vetting those out. Being
100%.
saying like, yeah, you know what, this doesn't feel right. So
yeah, we closed 700 transactions last month, and of those 700, we found 2 that were fraudulent. So I mean, the best intent is clearly the overriding factor. It's just weeding out which ones those are that aren't, and that's typically done by finding oddity or inconsistency in application, and that's what we're here for, to help.
Yeah, and we were talking earlier about AI and what role is that going to play in seller impersonation. And so, because like right now, I could go record myself, put it in an AI thing, and have myself talking in a robotic voice, and it might sound a little bit like my voice, but I forget Synthesia or something like that. There's some sites that you can do that, and that's kind of interesting, and I'm wondering what that's going to do. So that goes into my second question, or segues into my next question, which is, what are your thoughts on the future of the title industry, and how do you see CW evolving with that in the years moving forward?
Well, it's funny, the concept of closing from an escrow standpoint, of closing a transaction on time and without mistakes and being a success are long over. Now it's more about the experience. It's about a hospitality and a concierge feel. Of course, we closed it on time without any errors, right? That's the basement. Now it's about the experience, and that experience goes to facilities. That experience goes to value adds. How are we communicating with our clients? Are we providing them ease of use? Whether it's through portals, through like our Qualia system, whether it's through fillable forms and easy to use forms, whether it's even as simple as a mobile notary coming to you or a remote online notary where you can notarize your documents from your living room if you want. Those things that COVID brought to the forefront are not going away. In regards to AI, I see AI affecting the escrow side of the house a little bit less than the title insurance side of the house. In the next 5 years or so, I see all industries are going to be permeated with it. And like we've discussed before, I think AI is still in its infancy. Yeah. Title insurance has always been criticized as an industry slow to change, slow to technology. And I still think that we'll be relatively slow to that. But that being said, we've got elements of AI that we're working with right now in title production. Is it perfect? Not by any means, but it does enhance our experts. I don't think our experts are going to be eliminated. Now, that being said, on the backside of the next 10 years or so, I see it learning on its own and figuring out those pieces and becoming more and more involved in what we do. And I think that will help benefit accuracy. I think it will help benefit speed, which are two things that from a title insurance standpoint, and especially a title commitment production standpoint, that we battle with every day, is speed and accuracy. It's got to be the balance between the two. So I think our industry has learned over the past 3 years that our resistance to change in technology, or at least to embrace it, is really only going to be those people that have 3 years left to do it in the industry. Because those of us who have more than that know that it's coming, and we need to embrace it and to harness its ability to enable us. Again, ultimately, at the end of the day, it will be to enable us to provide a better client experience.
Yeah, I think you're spot on the AI front, and we talked about this earlier, and just saying, like, yeah, I think the more inputs, the more people use it and the more inputs it has, because right now it doesn't have enough inputs, I believe, to really learn on itself at the rate that I see it in the future, because just not enough people. Like, I use Google Bard every day, like daily. Instead of actually use Google, instead of Google search, I'll go to Bard first and then ask it the question and talk like a person. And then if I need to, I'll hit the little Google search button and then it searches. But in addition to all of that, I also believe KYC processes. So like we were talking about the seller impersonation and all these other things. What is even from an agent perspective, say you get that inquiry, and what does that process look like for us in terms of, and I say KYC, I just threw that out there like people know. Like in the crypto world, like all of those exchanges and stuff use this process called KYC. You take your driver's license, you take a picture of it, it looks it up. Sometimes you have to, so I've done somewhere I had to do a face scan and kind of like and so those processes I think will help too, and will have to be, I think, might be standard, but I'm talking 10 to 15 years out maybe, but like when someone inquires, like, hey, just go through this little process real quick so that we at least can know that you're a real person. Because
I mean, that even goes to the whole concept of notarization, right? I mean, that is such a tried and true long-standing method of validating someone who is conveying title, right? And if you're going to sign a deed, is it really the seller that is signing that document, or do they have fake ID and all of that? We had a scenario a couple of weeks ago where we had a seller in South Korea, and they weren't a South Korean citizen, but they had been there for a quite some time. And under traditional remote online notarization, you have to go through the vetting process to do that. Typically, you have to have credit history and you have to have residency history to answer all of those questions correctly. And they couldn't pass that. And so now, when we couldn't get an embassy, a notary appointment at the embassy for quite some time, so we were kind of stuck. And in lieu of them literally getting on an airplane and flying home, or CW Title getting on an airplane and flying to South Korea, we found a kind of cutting edge remote online notarization vendor who one of our local vendors had applied to, hadn't been approved yet, but we accelerated their approval. And this RON, in lieu of the vetting that traditional RON companies use, they used biometrics. And it was so cool. It worked. We closed on time. Everybody was happy, and that is going to permeate what we do, especially from that aspect of it, from an escrow side. Our ability to, it was so cool to me that we weren't sure it was going to work. It did, and it's such a cool thing to think that now we've gotten to that point. And if you stop and think about it, it's actually more secure than sitting down at the title and escrow company, showing them your driver's license. It was secure for us,
right?
Having gone through a biometric process, than it is having a notary look at a license and knowing whether it's a fake ID or not. I mean,
I agree.
It is, and it's embracing those types of things to enhance what we do. Again, it all circles back around to the client experience, and it wouldn't have been a great experience for them if they needed to get on an airplane and fly to the United States.
Yeah, that would have been doing the most.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's just it's so fascinating. And I want to backtrack and say, like I said, KYC, that means know your customer. That's what that stands for, just for people listening, or if you don't know that terminology. But it's thrown around in that world constantly because of all of the scamming and all of the, scam artists just drive me insane. They're like the scum of the earth. Like, I'm gonna go ahead and say it, they're the scum of the earth. I
agree with you 100%. I spend a significant amount of my time each day defending against them. I totally agree with you, Dave.
It makes me mad. Like, I'm just like, you really sit around doing this? Like, this is so because again, I'm always assuming good intent in people in general. So,
and the challenge we face is every time they're successful, we're funding their efforts to get better, and that's the scary part.
Right. Crazy. So, what are some of the most important trends that you're seeing? I mean, we kind of might have hit on it, but in the real estate market right now, and how is CW helping your clients navigate that? Your clients being, the people that are buying and selling, and or the agents.
Well, and I'm sure your brokers are seeing this. In a condensed market, we're finding a lot more what we term forced sales, where it's not just somebody's moving from one home to another, A to B residential resale. It's sales for a reason. And whether that's estates or divorces, the percentage of those has gone up. And those transactions are much more complicated, intricate. They require more question and answer, more forms. It's one of the reasons why I don't get to run out and play in the sun very often, because they are significantly more challenging to get through, as well for your brokers too, right? Especially in divorce scenarios where they may not be amicable and that sort of thing. So yeah, we're seeing a higher percentage of that, which isn't bad. It's just a sign of the times.
Yeah, well, that's good info, and this is going to go into the next question. So, like, knowing that and hearing, and hopefully people are hearing and listening to you speak and saying like, wow, this is first of all, it's a lot of good info for anybody who's listening in terms of what CW does in title in general and escrow. What is one piece of advice that you would give to realtors who are looking for a title company to partner with? And, and I think you've already kind of answered the question in just the way you've been explaining some of these things. But what advice would you give to them who are looking for someone to partner with in title?
Yeah, I think it goes to client experience. And I know I've said that many times. And I say that many times, and I find that that's the reasoning why a broker would want to choose a title company, because that's kind of our center. And that client experience can go from the facilities that you have. It goes as deep as to what happens when a title claim happens. They're relatively infrequent, but what happens when one does happen? And do you have access to somebody here locally, or are you sending it off to some place in the Midwest where it's going to get lost in a pile of national title claims? We actually had one title claim where our underwriter had misinterpreted a portion of it. The buyer didn't, the buyer didn't necessarily agree with that. They picked up the phone. They got our CEO on the phone, which is the type of access that we have here at CW. And we ultimately ended up talking to the underwriter and kind of explaining, because we speak the same language that they do. And they ultimately said, oops, yes, we made a mistake. And they turned around and honored the claim and handled it, therefore go forward. It's that having that local advocate, it helps with that client experience and having access. We've got multiple underwriters. So when having the ability to pick up the phone and call me, our CEO, our chief operating officer, and just running by the decision makers are sitting here in the Pacific Northwest. And with multiple underwriters, oftentimes we can call, and we don't play mom against dad. Sometimes we do, but with multiple underwriters, the title companies that have one, they get one answer. And if we get one answer from one, we can say, we can try out different brands to see, which is going to be least onerous. Oftentimes they're the same, but we at least have options there to go down to, again, to make things least onerous for the client, to therefore then make it a great client experience. It all boils down to that.
Yeah.
Because what we do is a reflection of what you guys do, right? Because for all intents and purposes, you're the referring party. And if we're not providing you and your clients with a great experience, then somebody else will.
Yeah. And clearly you guys really focus on customer service and experience, and you have another element of that, like that no other title company I've heard of has. And that's a children's book. Tell me more about how that came about. What is it? Like, you told me about that, and I was just going, wait, huh? That doesn't, it makes sense. Tell me more about the children's book aspect of this.
So this is something that's very near and dear to my heart, to our leadership at CW's heart. It's the brainchild of our CEO, Todd Miller. And he, since like day 2 after he joined our company many years ago, had been trying to come up with a way to, knowing that when children are involved in the purchase or sale of a home and they're moving and there's anxiety and there's stress and unknown and all of those different things, having felt that himself as a child, myself as a child, we wanted to find a way that we could try to alleviate that. And so that unleashed, I will say we're bound by insurance commissioner rules on things that we can and cannot do. We didn't want to charge for this because that's not a value add. That's something that we didn't want to do. Right. So what we hit, the brainchild of Todd's was Project Diggery-Doo. And yes, every time I say that, I giggle. Diggery-Doo. Diggery-Doo is a children's audiobook from Audible. And we are, what we do is, when we're setting up our signing appointments and talking to buyers and sellers, we ask them if they have children under the age of 8. That's what it's geared towards. It's a young children's book. If they have children under the age of 8 in the home, and if they'd like to have a copy of Diggery-Doo, it's moving day. And the book is the children in the family that are moving don't have any anxiety, but the family's pet dragon Diggery-Doo does. And so the family is trying to make Diggery-Doo feel better about the move, and ultimately he does. It's an 8-minute audiobook. It's a short listen, and it's free. We offer it to our clients that so choose to do it. We've had great feedback on this. We actually had a grandparent who didn't obviously have children under the age of 8 in the home. And he said, I don't, but I'd really like to have a copy of that to give to my grandkids. And
that's cool.
So it's another way of proving, it's another way of adding value to our clients. It's another part of that experience. But ultimately, the root of all of it is, it's just a really good thing to do to help children in that scenario, right? it is we're being good stewards and good humans at that point, and that's the root of it all.
That's really cool. Yeah, it's cool and out of left field, honestly. Like I think for me at least, like what I'm hearing, I'm like, man, that but it does make sense though. And I like the fact that you're just thinking outside of the box, and I really love that part of it, and I'm looking forward. I'm actually gonna go look it up.
You should, or just request it. We'll send you a copy.
Yeah, I'll request
and again, it's a game of inches, right? It is a where we're trying, again, as we're adding that value. Is it needle moving? Probably not. But is it something that's a good value add? Can all of your brokers who work with us say to their clients, hey, if you're in this scenario, CW Title will provide this complimentary book. It's fun, right? And if we can help alleviate some of that, like I said, I remember when I was a kid and I was nervous about moving. There were no audiobooks back then. But if it brings some joy or eliminates some of that to some of our clientele and helps our community, that's what we're all about.
That's really cool. And this last question I have for you is not in the CW realm, but more just in the leadership realm. Because we talked about the summer, it being busy and all those things. How do you maintain, as a leader, you're in a leadership role of a big organization and big company and do some important stuff, and you're shielding off scammers for, millions of dollars in some cases and thousands of others. And like, how do you maintain that balance as a leader in this particular market and stay optimistic in this market and stay, upbeat and stay, because people are following you, they're listening to you, all those things. How do you balance that? Is there like a level of self-care that you do, or is there what's your secret sauce? Man, we got to know.
That's a great question. I think, I'm generally an optimist to begin with. So, and our team members are, again, when we started CW, there were 4 of us, and now there's 160 of us. Mm-hmm. And so I've seen us grow and develop along the way, along with the people that are that 160 team members that we have. So they become more like family. I spend more time with these guys than I do my own real family. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like I owe it to them to maintain that optimism, because there's a certain level of pessimism out there, and we're continually wanting them to stay positive, because knowing full well that the clients that they're working with, not buyers or sellers per se, but the brokers that we work with are also facing similar pressures. Yeah. And so to maintain our positivity with them as well. And I think generally our team is a positive team. How do I help maintain that on myself? It's a daily challenge of mine, and staying in connection with them, making sure that they know that their company cares. We had somebody the other day that said, I can't believe that my company would do that for me. And I said, well, the reason why your company will do that for you is because I work for this company too, and I want to work for a company that would do that for me.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's this really cool blend that we have. Our CEO, Todd Miller, has an open door policy and best ideas win policy. Everybody's got a voice here. We may not always enact it. We may not always agree with it, but everybody has a voice. And I think that helps bring people into being or feeling like they're more than just at their desk or in their team or in their branch. I think it helps develop kind of a concept of being a part of a greater we than that. And so is it easy? It's not, but it is something that if you continue to try and do every single day, you turn your head for a week and it can go sideways on you pretty quickly. Yeah. So we're pretty in tune with what we're doing with our team to make sure that they can maintain that positivity.
It shows. And, having met Todd when he first came in, because I didn't know it was prior, and then meeting you, and we sat down with you all, and you always have kept the same energy. Like you've always kept. I just haven't seen y'all in a different mode, I guess, if you will. You know, like it's always the same. You're not like too high, too low. Just kind of, you know, an optimistic person. Just, you know, and I think that definitely starts at the top with y'all, and then, you know, I'm sure it's got to be a great place to work and great place to work with. So
Yeah.
I appreciate everything y'all do, and keeping that and maintaining that optimism, because it, you know, it's needed, and even keel, just being like a leader, you know. So
Well, and we've been another example is we've been doing leadership. We've been going to each of our branches and doing leadership conversations. We called it coffee talk with Pod. So we've been, and it's about transparency at that point,
Yeah.
right? It's about being real. Yes, we know where we're at, but but there's also opportunity within this, and being real. It helps when you're even keel like that, like you said, Dave. But I think it's that transparency, that being real, and human beings that are just like them. It helps to, if they see us being optimistic generally, that organically then feeds to them. And being realistic and not trying to pull the wool over their eyes. They're smart people, right?
yeah, exactly.
Just as your brokers are, right? They're smart people. They know what's going on.
Yeah.
And if we tried to do that, it would be figured out very quickly, and
Yes.
it would benefit no one.
For sure. People see through all that. Before we move on to our next segment, do you have any other things that are burning on your chest that you want to get off that you weren't able to share, or anything like that?
No, that was fantastic, and thank you again for the opportunity. It's always great to collaborate. It's great to see you, as always.
Yeah.
And I'll just throw out there to everybody, in those scenarios, call timeout, call your experts. And even if it's a normal title or escrow question, we're the experts. Don't get over the tips of your skis and try to answer something that may potentially put you in a precarious position. Utilize us. We're here. And not only do we like to do that. That's fun. And our team member, we've got the bandwidth to be able to do it. So our team is here, ready, willing, and able, and we appreciate everything that you guys do for us as well.
All right, man. Well, thank you. I appreciate all of that. And I think that those are good words to leave on. And with that, we are going to get to our last segment, Hot Take. You know this is coming because you probably listened. We are going to get into Hot Take. Are you ready for Hot Take? Either or questions. And we have 5 of them for you. Are you ready?
All set?
All right. Summer or fall?
Fall.
Fall. Okay. What you just I think
College football and generally speaking, a slower real estate market. So I can see my family again.
Yeah. Yes. And I heard that. All right. Audiobook or reading a book, a real book?
I'm going to show my gray hair here and say paper. I like to hold the book in my hand.
Yeah.
My lovely wife sits next to me with an audiobook in. So.
Oh, really? Yeah. Same with my wife. Anne's listening to audiobooks more now, and I can't do it for some reason. All right. Since we are in the summer, hot dogs or hamburgers?
Oh.
Or neither? Are you?
No, I love a good hot dog.
Oh, okay.
Mustard and chopped white onion only.
Ooh, that's good. That's good. Hot dogs. My grandma, when I go to my grandma's house, she's from the South, and I used to eat hot dogs. It would just be a piece of bread, mustard on it, and you put the hot dog diagonally, and you just fold it up. That's how I ate hot dogs. And so now, when I'm with my kids, they look at me crazy when I'm like, "Hey, just use bread for the buns." Like,
Yep.
They look at me like, "We don't have any buns." I'm like, "Yeah, you do. You got bread right there." What are you talking? They look at me like I'm nuts.
Yeah.
All right. So, going to a theater or binge watching a series?
Binge watching a series. I just finished one tail end of last weekend.
Okay.
Ted Lasso.
Yeah.
And, I literally shed a tear when it was over because the writing was so fantastic. My daughters play soccer. It was just had all of the tenements of things that I loved, and now it's gone.
Yeah, I think I need to. I'm hearing that a lot, and I'm a former coach, so I definitely I need to sit down and watch that at some point. And if you're a Jason Sudeikis fan, and this is not for you, for everybody else, Hot Ones. He was on Hot Ones, and I don't know if Hot Ones is a show where it's on YouTube. And they go down the line and eat chicken wings with like, and it gets spicier and spicier, and they interview at the same time, and it's
wow,
hilarious. And I think I'll probably end up doing some hot takes. We actually did one hot take with some hot sauce. There's a version episode we did on Inside Abode not too long ago with Jenny Wetzel, but I think we're going to continue that, and I'm going to be doing some hot takes with hot sauce. And
well, thank you for doing that after today.
I know, 'cause I will be, the first ones will be like people, I'll just let them know what they're getting to. So it'll be a thing. All right, last one. Would you rather live, or no, I'll say this. I don't want to say live, because I'll just say this. East Coast or West Coast?
My daughter is going to school in South Carolina. And every time I visit there, she says, "Dad, why are you so chatty when we're down here? You talk to everyone." And I said, "Because everybody's so nice." Northeast Coast, probably not. If I were to go that direction, it would definitely be in the South. Mm-hmm. But I'm a West Coast kid.
Yeah. No, I'm with you in the South. Like Texas gets this bad rap, which, I mean, for good reason in some ways. But I love going down there. Like the people, Southern comfort is a thing, and I just think everyone should experience that.
Southern comfort is definitely real. Yes.
Where they make
and until you feel it and experience it, and it's and have it sustained over the course of time when there, it doesn't resonate. And when you do, And I've been trying to analyze how that reflects on how we are here at times. Mm-hmm. And it's just different. That's the way I can describe it.
It's definitely different. Well, Troy, it's been a great conversation and packed full of just really good information. So thank you for agreeing to come on the show and taking time out of your day. I know you're really busy. And, hopefully this was really useful for people. I think it really was. And I think there's a lot of information here to digest for a lot of folks. And they probably might listen to it twice. Probably should. So thank you. Appreciate you.
Thank you, do. I appreciate it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, with that will wrap up our episode today. Thank you for tapping in for this hour and maybe a little bit under an hour, but really good episode. And if you want to get in touch with Troy, how do they get in touch with? Do they call, email if they need, or how do they get in touch if they need to have a question on some CW title stuff? Where should they go?
You bet. They can email me at tst.george@cwtitles.net. My phone number is 425-896-3835, or get a hold of if you have an account manager, get a hold of your account manager. They can connect you with me. Our website is cwtitle.com, and call any number on there. They'll patch it through to me, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Cool. And I will have that information down in the show notes. And with that, we are out of here. Thank y'all for listening. Have a good one.